Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Julianne and I'm on a mission to read every single physical book I own that I haven't read yet, aka TBR 0. Hey! In today's video I will be recapping month 25 of the project, July 2025. If you are new here, I recommend you check out some of my recent videos, especially my last rule change, because that will get you up to date with where I am in terms of the rules of the project and what I am trying to achieve. But for now, I am going to talk about July. Oh my god. So, I started filming a vlog for July, and then I went to take some of my other videos off of my SD card in order to edit them from previous months, and accidentally deleted everything. Everything, like 4 months worth of recaps and vlog footage and all of that stuff. I managed to recover it. Shout out to SanDisk's own recovery software. It is actually great, and if you buy SanDisk memory cards you get a year's free trial. But oh my god, the stress, the time, the annoyance. At one point I was just like, maybe I should just say screw it and just film recaps of everything, because I did have like vlog footage from April I think on there. Yeah, it was so stressful, and it just happened because basically I think that my mouse was dying and it was like clicking where I didn't want it to click and things like that. It was the last straw. I did buy a new mouse after that, and now I have a beautiful, beautiful mouse. My mouse is so lovely. I'm going to put some footage here of my mouse because it's that beautiful. I decided, you only live once. How often do I have to buy a new mouse? Literally never. I have never bought a mouse. I've always just had a second-hand mouse that my dad somehow acquired, and I've gone, Dad, I think my mouse is dying, and he will give me another mouse. Because my dad has this tendency to buy like 40 computers and take other people's old computers and stuff, and so he just had an accumulated collection of mice and keyboards and things, so I would always get one off of him. So this was my first time ever where he was like, oh, you've already had my last mouse that I'm not using. And so I had to buy a mouse. I will obviously give him back the mouse that I had that's broken so that he can probably repair it, but I had to buy a mouse, and so I bought this beautiful Logitech gaming mouse that like lights up. I don't even really game, you know, I haven't got the time with the TBR 0 project to game, but I bought this beautiful mouse. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed some footage of that. Anyway, back to books. Because of that drama, I did not finish the July vlog that I started. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the footage from that vlog in which I talk about the books that I have read up until that point. So I only filmed one vlog, and it was quite far into the month when I did it, so I can just take that bit out. So enjoy past me telling you about the books that I had read up until that point. So I mainly read reward books to start the month, despite the fact I had not earned most of them. I am now in debt, so if you are new here, my current rules mean that for every 2 TBR books that I read, I can read another one that's not on my physical TBR, so like a library book or a audiobook from Spotify, something like that, you know, someone else's book, you know, I've borrowed off them, just something that's not on my physical TBR. But sometimes I get a little out of whack. A couple of months ago I had earned myself several reward books, got really into reading the reward books, and now I have an issue where I'm quite far behind. So there we go. Starting off with reward books rather than books from my TBR. The first one I finished was The Secret Service of Tea and Treason, which is the third in India Holton's historical fantasy romance series, in which there are pirates with flying houses and witches who make things fly, and in this book we discover a secret service of servants who are secretly controlling the nation. These books are a lot of fun. I love the narrative style. It's just so idiosyncratic and funny and wry, and makes reading these books, no matter what happens in them, a lot of fun. Then I read Butter by Asako Yuzuki for my book club. I am a member of the Gumption Club, Lena Normsey's Patreon, and the kind of London group, as it were, has a book club, and I've been going for several months now, and this month we read Butter, and I have to say I really, really enjoyed it. It was not at all what I was expecting from the synopsis. You know, it's about a woman journalist in Japan who starts trying to interview this serial killer who is about to lodge an appeal against her conviction. And I thought, I don't think this is going to be my kind of thing. I'm not really into crime and serial killers and all of that kind of stuff. But I really, really enjoyed it. It's not really a crime book. It's more of a psychological exploration of the main character's life and those are the people around her. And how the kind of disruptive force of this very strange woman that she decides to get to know impacts all of them and changes their lives. So yeah, way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Really, really enjoyed it. I can see this definitely being a book that I would like to reread again in the future. Then I read Everything's Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. I had heard a lot of stuff about this book, naturally, being someone who YouTubes, and I had put it on Notify Me at the library. So if your library has the Lullaby app, then if there is a book in the catalogue that they haven't bought yet and you'd like them to buy, you can click the Notify Me button, and then I think it makes it a recommendation that they buy it, and then if they do get it, you get a notification it's come in. And I was like the first person in there. It came up that it was available and that I could borrow it right away. I was the first person to lock eyes on this in the catalogue. I mean, this is maybe not true because they might have bought several copies at once, but if they only bought one, I was first. Let's pretend I was first. I was that quick off the draw. Anyway, I could have waited a couple of hours for some other people to borrow it and then gone in the queue to get it in a few weeks. But I thought, screw it. I want to read this. I'm going to get this now. So I hit borrow, which then of course meant I had to listen to it. It is a very short book. It's actually 5 and a bit hours long. They've got it down in the catalogue I just checked as 6 hours approx. But it is so compelling, so fascinating. I thought I would drag it out over maybe like a week or so by reading it in little bits just whilst travelling, but I honestly couldn't put it down. I had to keep listening to it until I had finished it. It was fantastic, and I immediately finished it and then needed to tell everybody I know facts about tuberculosis. I found out last year that my granddad actually had tuberculosis as a child. He was a very short man, and my dad is very tall, and we never knew why there was this massive height difference between them. You know, like surely my dad had the genetic code to be a tall person, and that can't have come from his mum because his mum was also not very big, and not his dad. You know, like it didn't make sense. You know, they looked like each other, so he was clearly not the milkman's baby. But yeah, we didn't know why. And then last year, when my dad was going through some paperwork, he found some documentation of the fact that my granddad had tuberculosis as a child, and he would have had it in the 1930s, before we had the National Health Service in Britain, before there was a cure for tuberculosis, when everything was, you know, all the treatments were really just quackery. And so he was lucky to survive, but it made a huge difference to the rest of his life. So it was really, really interesting to read about a bit of that history, but also how there are people in countries that are not as wealthy as you know, my country and the USA and other countries with established health systems, who are living like, you know, barely better lives with tuberculosis than people did before we had modern treatment, all because of inequality of wealth and access to health systems. Then I listened to Bunny by Mona Awad, which I had borrowed from the library a couple of weeks ago. I think I had a hold that came in, and it was on Borrow Box where you can't deliver later, so I had to get it. And it was going to need to go back to the library, so I had to listen to it. And oh my god, this book was so easy to listen to. It's a kind of really strange horror book which is set at a very prestigious university where the main character is doing a creative writing graduate programme, which for people in the UK is a master's I'm assuming it's like a MFA because it seems to be several years of the program, and she's got like a stipend to live off, but it's a totally different kind of life than the one she used to. The other people there are very privileged, and there's this group of women who act in a very strange, very girlish, over the top way, and they call each other Bunny. And she's kind of fascinated by them, but also hates them at the same time. And then when they invite her to attend their smut salon event, she goes along with a lot of trepidation and finds herself being drawn into their, well, cult. It's so interesting. I did kind of guess one of the big reveals at the end, but I still found it incredibly compelling despite that. And I am really, really looking forward to the sequel. I think it's coming out later this year, and I just know it's going to be loads more fun. Then, eventually, after all of those books which were not on my TBR, I finally finished one that was. I have been chipping away at this, Dumplin by Julie Murphy. And yeah, I decided one day I was just gonna get to the end because I was only, I think, about this way through. So yeah, I finished this a few days ago. I really enjoyed it. It's about a girl who is in like her last year of high school by the end of the book. It starts off like in the summer, and so I picked this up thinking, a book set during the summer for me to read in the summer. I had made myself a little summer TBR pile with this on, all books set during the summer, I thought. It's now a couple of hours later because I had to go have dinner. But anyway, Dumplin and the plan did not work together very well. What would have worked really well is, assuming all of these are set fully during the summer, I read it last, and it would have been a great transition book between my plan to read summer YA in July and then sort of back to school vibes in August, transitioning into spooky vibes in September and October. And then November, December, I'm thinking I'll read a lot of fantasy, and my reward books are going to be Christmas books. I am trying to get through my massive list of reward books. I have landed myself a bit of a situation where I've realised that I have taken the fun out of reward books somewhat because I have a list of them to get through. I have, about a dozen reward books on the list, and all things I've got from the library or that I had from NetGalley that I need to read soon. And yeah, it has now basically become another TBR list, which is not the greatest feeling, but there we go, that's what I've got. And current me, past me for you, but current me for me is back, and I'm going to tell you about the rest of the books that I read. So after I finished Dumplin, my next TBR book that I started was This Lullaby by Sarah Dessen. This was a very different Sarah Dessen book from every other one that I've read. The main character in this is not likeable. The story kind of jumps around in terms of timelines. It was interesting. Not my favourite. My favourite is still Last Chance, but yeah, I did enjoy it. There's some aspects of it that have not aged well, like some things that the love interest does that, you know, nowadays you're like, that's kind of bad / offensive / yeah. But at the time it was written, I'm just checking when it was published, 2002. So if I was reading this in 2002, I would not have batted an eyelid at the fact that like the characters were printing other people's pictures from like working at a photo shop and sticking them on their wall and other weird things like that. But now I'm like, yeah. I'd be really interested to know if this book has been updated for, you know, recent publication, or if it's still in print. You know, I know that Sarah Dessen's books are really popular, and that's a little detail that I would expect might have been edited out in more recent printings. Let me know in the comments if you have read that and if that was taken out. But yeah, I found it was really interesting having a very like deliberately unlikable main character. I feel that Sarah Dessen does those sort of like grumpy, bit surly kind of girls really, really well. Then I read Hour of the Bees by Lindsay Eagar. This was the cutest, sweetest, saddest story about a girl who goes with her family to live with her grandpa, who has dementia, to basically get ready his farmhouse and the land around it to sell because he needs to move into a home for his own good. It's just the most heartbreaking, powerful, magical realism infused kind of story, and yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So this is a proof copy that I got from Walker Books in 2016 or late 2015 and just never got around to. And so one of the wonderful things about this project is getting to finally read some of these gems that have been lurking on my shelf all of that time. So yeah, thanks Walker. Next up, I read Pretty Thing by Jennifer Nadel. This is a kind of historical fiction young adult book about a girl who starts up a affair with a much older man. It's set in 1976 and it was just horrific seeing how nobody really batted much of an eyelid. You know, none of her friends were like, this is weird, this is wrong. The teachers kind of become aware of it but don't make a big thing out of it. Like, she thinks it's okay and perfectly acceptable and thinks she's in love with him, and the way that he acts towards her is just it's just gross and horrible, and it really made my skin crawl. The writing was incredible. I think it really captured the teenage kind of vacillating between two opinions and kind of struggling to make sense of everything in your head. That was very well done. But the subject matter of this book, This is a finished copy that was sent to me by the publisher, Little Brown. Now it says young adult fiction on the back, but this wasn't published by their young adult imprint. This was published by Corsair. I don't know who Corsair are. I'm now going to Google this. Okay, it just says it's a boutique literary list that was originally founded with a dozen or so original titles. And yeah, it's books we love of any flavour. They look for diversity and the unexpected. Okay, that makes sense because I don't think any of the other books that it's listed as from this publisher are young adult, just off the top of my head. So, interesting. Then I finished listening to Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner, which is the third and final book in the Fallen Gods trilogy, which is an absolutely incredible fantasy trilogy about a world where gods are very present and sustained and grown by faith and works done in their honour, but also killable, I think is the best way to describe it. I can't say very much about this because it is the third in a series. I really have been trying to finish off some series lately, so I was really pleased to read this, especially as I'd read the second one not that long ago, and so I remembered it all very vividly. But I really enjoyed it, and I very much recommend this trilogy if you like fantasy and very real characters. You know, what I really liked about this trilogy is that death doesn't feel like a casual thing. You know, there are a lot of books with violence and wars in which people just sort of smash their way through vast populations. But there's none of that in this trilogy. All of the characters feel the impact of their choices and the violence that they have to commit in order to survive and get what they want very keenly. It's not easy, it's always difficult, it's always regrettable, and you really feel the impact of the deaths throughout the book. Even the deaths on the side of the enemy, it's just so viscerally horrible that you can't help but really feel it. And I just thought that was incredible writing and really realistic as well. The world I want to live in is one where life and death is taken that seriously. Then I read Return to Me by Justina Chen. I had read another book by the same author many years ago, Girl Overboard, which is about a girl who gets into snowboarding and has an accident and has to figure out her life. This is actually an advanced reading copy. This is an American edition. I don't know how I got my hands on this. I can only assume that at some event somebody was giving away unwanted books that they'd received from publishers, and this was one of them. That is all I can think of. But anyway, I was excited to finally get around to reading it after all this time, having never read a second Justina Chen book. I really enjoyed the premise of this book. So it's about a girl who is all set to go to university when suddenly, after the move, it transpires that her father has been having an affair and is going to leave her mother. And she's always been a daddy's girl. She's always sided with him. She's always been very unsympathetic to her mother to the extent of sort of like ganging up and going, oh, ha, ha, isn't she silly with him about her? And so this really changes her whole life, her perspective. She feels that betrayal very keenly. So yeah, it was a really interesting read, seeing how that changed her life and how she dealt with all of that turmoil, made decisions about her future that she hadn't previously anticipated ever having or wanting to make. Then I read my final TBR book of the month, The Family from One End Street by Eve Garnett. This is a lovely little book which was originally published in the 1930s. In 1937 it was awarded the Carnegie Medal. This is because it is one of the first children's books to depict a working class family, which I thought was super interesting. There are some people who've read it and thought, okay, it's a little bit patronising about the family, but actually I thought it was, you know, despite those kind of impacts, like the author was not herself working class, you know, she is coming from a different position. I thought it was quite reasonably and sensitively done, you know. There were a few little phrases, bits where I was like, but, you know, I don't think it looks down on its characters so much as, you know, sometimes tries to inhabit a culture that the author's not part of and doesn't manage that 100% of the time. Regardless, I enjoyed it, and I can see how it paved the way for books like Noel Streatfeild's books, where the characters have to deal with a lot of financial issues, are quite often poor, from big families, that kind of thing. It just, yeah, I could see the seeds of that in here. There were some points where it was so much from the point of view of the parents that I was like, is this a children's book anymore? And that was quite interesting, because nowadays the convention is that in a children's book everything's got to be from the point of view of the kids, but there were multiple bits in this where it was actually from the point of view of the parents, and I thought that was really interesting. Even though the story, you know, had a lot of the kids in it, it was told from the point of view of the parents. So yeah, it gave me some good food for thought there, and it was great to read a little bit of children's literature history. Then finally, I read the most incredible book for my book club, and you guys will be watching this ages after I've actually been to book club and discussed it with people, but right now I have not been to book club. I have not got to discuss it with anybody, so you're going to have to, you know, deal with some great levels of enthusiasm here that I haven't had the opportunity to unleash on anybody else. And that book is The Centre by Ayesha Manazir Siddiqi. This book, oh my god, if you like Bunny, then you will like this. Like, I feel like these two books kind of go together, but I think I enjoyed The Centre even more. The Centre is about a Pakistani woman who now lives in London, who works as a translator. She actually translates subtitles mainly, but she has aspirations. She dreams of being able to translate great works of literature. That is her dream. She comes from quite a well-off family, and upper middle class family in Pakistan, but she lives as many Londoners do. I found several aspects of her life quite relatable, and yeah, I really warmed to her as a character very quickly. One day she goes to a conference about translation, and there she meets this white man who has an incredible ability with languages. He speaks some very difficult languages to a very high level, and she finds this very attractive and intriguing. So she ends up going on a date with him, they start a relationship. She always feels like he's holding something back from her though, or that she is just not fully engaging with the relationship. Finally, in a sort of like last ditch effort to try and settle for him, really, is what it is, she invites him to come to Pakistan and meet her parents. She has been trying to teach him Urdu for months and months. She had tried teaching him little phrases here and there, but he insisted that the only way he could learn was through total immersion and working very hard, and the way he learned all his other languages. But then on the plane, he suddenly speaks to one of the cabin crew absolutely fluently, and she is furious. She is convinced that he has known it this whole time and has not been honest with her, and she just feels completely uncomfortable around him. As they arrive, they go to meet her parents, and she just feels wrong about the whole thing. He ends up confessing to her that the way he learns these languages is by going to this very specific, strict 2-week course at this place called The Centre. And he is only allowed to refer people to the centre once in his lifetime. So she is going to be his one referral. Their relationship quickly falls apart after that, but she wants to go to the centre and see this for herself. So she finds the money and she goes, and her whole life changes forever. And yeah, it just gets wild from there. That's all I can really say because I don't want to spoil anything, but I loved this book. I thought it was brilliant, and yeah, vibes of Bunny. A very different situation, but I just thought the stuff about power and wanting to achieve things and the whole mystery aspect to it was very, very similar. So yeah, I highly recommend that. So there we go. That's the books that I finished reading in month 25 of my TBR 0 project. Now let's do the tally. So I borrowed butter from my partner. That's one. It's off in its own category. I listened to 5 audiobooks from the library, and I read 6 books from my TBR. So a month in which I broke even. I did not catch up on my TBR deficit, but hey, I still read 6 TBR books. So I'm going to take that as a win, and I will just have to try and catch up in month 26, which is the month that I am in now. So thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, if you are doing any reading project, your own TBR 0 maybe, or a different type of challenge. And if you are documenting it, please let me know where so that I can follow along. You will see me again soon. Bye!